I was born at a place called Lubwa Mission. My name is Kenneth Kaunda, first president of Zambia.
We had schools for white people, schools for black people, schools for Indian people of Indian origin.
We have been here under the British for over 70 years.
Dr. Kaunda was born on the 28th of April 1924 in Lubwa, near Chinsali, Northern Rhodesia, now known as Zambia. His father came from Nyasaland, now known as Malawi, and was a reverend. His mother, Helen Kaunda, was a school teacher.
I was born at a place called Lubwa Mission in Chinsali district, Northern Rhodesia, today's Zambia. I was born of missionaries. My father was a reverend, my mother was a teacher. I was born there as last born of my family. Yes, I was trained as a teacher at the same school, same place, even at the place where I was born. As I was growing up, I could see clearly the differences in terms of treatment between my parents and the white missionaries. Yet both were missionaries, but there was a difference in the way they were treated. So I began to talk about such things. That place also helped me to try and help build a better society. A society where human beings are human beings.
Dr. Kaunda, like his mother, became a teacher and taught in Tanganyika in the late 1940s.
And I worked at my school, my birthplace, as a teacher for some 3-4 years. And I left to go and look for better places, better life. And I visited Tanganyika then, Tanzania today, with 2 of my closest friends. We didn't like it. We went back home. Then I went to to Salisbury, Harare today. Again, what I found there was terrible. So I went back home and worked as a welfare officer for some few months, 9 months, and then went back to teaching. From teaching, again, I didn't like it. I went back home to do farming, cooperative farming. From there, when I was teaching now at this second time, I was already involved in politics because this was what is called the Copper Belt, a very developed area in the Northern Rhodesia of our time. And there I got mixed up in politics.
Dr. Kaunda returned to Northern Rhodesia in 1949. In that year, he became an interpreter and advisor on African affairs to Sir Stuart Gould Brown, a white liberal settler and a member of the Northern Rhodesian Legislative Council. Dr. Kaunda acquired knowledge of the colonial government as well as political skills, both of which served him well when later that year he joined the African National Congress, ANC, the first major international colonial organization in Northern Rhodesia.
But I'm a man with a conscience, clear conscience. God is hearing me. I can never sell out Africa. Never. Not me. Not these boys here. Not these girls here. We are men and women of principle. We have done all these things in search of peace. But it has to be genuine peace, based on sincere, genuine majority rule. Anything else, you can kill us. Zambians will be born out of our blood. We'll continue to fight.
We had schools for white people, schools for black people, schools for Indian people of Indian origin. We had schools for coloreds, people called coloreds, the offspring of black and white. So we were a divided country. Hospitals, everything divided. There were places, there were towns where even roads, there were small tarmac roads on which black people could not walk, except the white. So that was the background against which I was brought up, and which made me, when I interpreted the teaching, biblical teaching, do unto others as you have do unto you. Love your neighbor as thou lovest thyself. I had to fight against these things. And that's how I joined the political struggle for our independence. It was against this background.
In the 1950s, Dr. Kaunda became the ANC Secretary General, functioning as its chief organizing officer, a role that brought him into close contact with the movement's rank and file. Thus, when the leadership of the ANC clashed over strategy in 1958 to 1959, Dr. Kaunda carried a major part of the ANC community. Operating structure in two new organizations, the Zambian African National Congress, Dr. Kaunda became the president of the organization and skillfully used it to forge a militant policy against the British plan for a federation of the three Central African colonies, Southern Rhodesia, Northern Rhodesia, and Nyasaland. African leaders opposed and feared any such federation because it would tend to place ultimate power in the hands of the white minority of settlers. Dr. Kaunda employed the Zambian Congress as an instrument for executing what he called positive non-violent action, a form of civil disobedience against the federation policy. His campaign had two major results. First, the British government modified the federation policy and eventually agreed to discard it. Second, the imprisonment of Dr. Kaunda and other militant leaders elevated them to a status of national heroes in the eyes of the people.
I had to go to prison. I had a choice to go into the bush with an automatic weapon and kill for my beliefs, or suffer for my beliefs by going to prison. Yes, I must say it was tempting. But I found that this was a much better way, and in the end it helped a lot, because it meant it was easier to settle issues after your independence than if you went to the bush. But I've never condemned those who found it necessary to go to the bush.
Right.
I never condemned them.
You could understand.
I understood why they had to do that.
Surely.
It was easier for me, therefore, to become a passive resistant. That's Mahatma Gandhi style. Defy the British authorities in Northern Rhodesia. They arrest me, send me to prison. I go there, suffer, get out, continue my struggle, arrest me again, put me back, I get out, arrest me again, put me back.
Thus, from 1960, there was a nationwide support of Zambia's independence movement and was secured as a dominant status of Dr. Kaunda in that movement. Dr. Kaunda was released from prison by the local government on January 8, 1960. At the end of that month, he was elected as president of the United National Independence Party, UNIP, which had been formed in October 1959 by his mother Chona, a militant nationalist who was disenchanted with the older ANC. The UNIP enjoyed spectacular growth, claiming 300,000 members by June 1960. In December 1960, the British colonial authorities invited Dr. Kaunda and several other UNIP leaders to participate in discussion on the status of the three colonies at a conference in London. Early in the following year, the British government announced the formal decolonization of Zambia will commence. The first major elections leading to the final decolonization were held in October 1962. The constitutional proposal upon which the election was based provided the European settlers in Northern Rhodesia with a disproportionate share of votes. Yet the two African parties, the UNIP and ANC, gained majority of the votes. The UNIP was the winner, gaining 15 out of 37 seats in the new Legislative Council. The UNIP success was attributed overwhelmingly to the leadership of Dr. Kaunda. This instilled fear in the European settlers that an African regime would unfairly disregard their interests. It was the same skill that enabled Dr. Kaunda to negotiate further constitutional advances, and in 1964, Zambia was granted independence with Dr. Kaunda as the president.
And in the end, of course, we succeeded and got our independence. And I think we established a much better society than they did. We formed this party on 24th October 1958.
I see, right.
So we still remember that date. And when we became independent, it was for us to select the date. So we chose 24th October 1964.
We have been here under the British for over 70 years. We never became capitalists. Never. We have remained humanists. Even when we are discriminated against, oppressed, killed, shot at like wild animals, we remain humanists.
In the 1970s, Dr. Kaunda's government acquired a majority interest in the country's copper mining operations and undertook to manage other industries as well. While investing large sums in the mining sector, the government neglected agriculture, while nevertheless having to spend increasing sums of subsidized food for the urban poor. These policies reduced agricultural production and increased Zambia's dependency on exports of copper and on foreign loans and aid. From the 1970s on, as a result of these policies, unemployment rose, living standards steadily declined, and the provision of education and other social services decayed. In foreign affairs, Dr. Kaunda led other countries of the Southern Africa in confronting white minority governments of Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and South Africa.
We wish the ZANU-PF government more and more victories. At this juncture, I would like to say to the women and youth of Namibia, do not despair. Your day cannot be far off now. Persevere. Stick together in firm unity under the leadership of Soko, and all will be well.
He imposed economic sanctions against Rhodesia in the 1970s at a great cost to his own country's economy. And in the 1970s, he allowed Zambia to be used as a base by black nationalist guerrillas. In 1976, he assumed emergency powers and he was re-elected as president in one-candidate elections. Several attempted coups against him in the early 1980s were squashed. The Zambian economy continued to deteriorate owing to a fall in the world price of copper, Zambia's chief export. The rising of price of oil, the withdrawal of foreign aid and investment by developed countries, and worsening corruption within Dr. Kaunda's government. With the public dissatisfaction mounting and the credible political opposition in the process of formation, Dr. Kaunda allowed opposition parties and set the stage for free multi-party elections in 1991. In the elections held late that year, Dr. Kaunda and UNIP were defeated by the Movement for Multi-Party Democracy, MMD. Dr. Kaunda's successor, Frederick Chiluba, took office on November 2, 1991. In the year 2000, Kaunda retired from active politics and became a statesman. He worked with many charity organizations and championed the fight against HIV and AIDS and publicly took tests to encourage the general public. Dr. Kaunda loved music, not just as a listener, but as a performer. Whether he was singing his all-time favorite song, Pagan Moon, for his wife Mama Betty, or Tiende Pamozi for the people, the music touched the mind and many souls.
Thrilling away on a pillow of fun as you walk the pagan moon. Every kiss was a sweet pagan prayer.
On June 17, 2021, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda sadly passed away in Zambia's capital, Lusaka, and was celebrated by African leaders from all over the continent.
Kenneth Kaunda was a loyal friend of the people of South Africa. He stood by us during our long and bitter struggle against the oppressive apartheid government.
Like the continent's other philosopher king, Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah, Kenya's Jomo Kenyatta, Tanzania's Julius Nyerere, Senegal's Leopold Senghor, Kenneth Kaunda went on to govern through his own distinctive political and economic philosophy.